Hi, and welcome to Automation Talent 101, Building a Winning Team. This is our second Industrial Automation Roundtable, and I'm Tim Finnerty, shareholder at Clayton McCurvey and head of our Industrial Automation practice. Can you flip the PowerPoint? Our Industrial Automation practice started about 5 to 10 years ago, and it's an offshoot of both our manufacturing distribution and our engineering practices. We've identified that the industrial automation businesses, which is what we say equals Industry 4.0, are booming in this area and continue to grow and help our manufacturing clients, get into the 21st century. And some of the things that we're doing to help owners is freeing up cash flow, leveraging the R&D tax credit, which is a huge opportunity for industrial automation companies, tax planning strategies, aligning KPIs, and helping you grow your business. One of the other big things that we're trying to do is connecting you on issues that you care about most. And what we've heard over the past few years is talent. Let's go to the next slide. So today we got three great panelists here, and we're gonna talk about building a winning team. And in doing that, right, you gotta hire for success, you gotta have cultural education, you need trust and accountability, team performance and feedback, and career progression. So these are the items that we're gonna hit on today. Next slide. Can you change the slide? Thanks. So here's our speakers today, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. We got Rick Sheridan of Menlo Innovations, Craig Sevillagio of Applied Manufacturing Technologies, and Samantha Zarko of Diag Partners. Rich, if you want to start and just give us a little brief introduction of yourself and kind of describe what building a winning team means to you.
Tim, thanks for having me on today. I'm Rich Sheridan. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a software design and development firm in Ann Arbor, Michigan called Menlo Innovations. And culture is everything for us. We have this fundamental belief that if we are going to be innovative, inventive, imaginative, and creative within our team, we have to create a culture of trust here. That goes to the heart of how we build our team. If you want to build a true team, you have to focus on every single step of the HR process. How do we recruit? How do we interview? How do we select? How do we onboard? How do we promote? How do we give feedback? And quite frankly, how do we fire? And all of those things have to be inherent in the process. HR has to become one of the most important things you do.
Great. Appreciate that, Rich. Craig, if you want to give a little introduction.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. Craig Sevillagio, COO of Applied Manufacturing Technologies, and excited to be here today. Really to provide a little insight, from my perspective, but also very curious to learn from two well-known leaders, Richard and Samantha, on their perspectives. So just a little bit about me, kind of one sentence. Had the privilege to grow in the environment at Applied Manufacturing Technologies and really learn from the founder and CEO, Mike Jacobs, my mentor to date over the last 18 years, contributing early as a technical team member and then progressing towards customer and industry-facing advocacy for the robotics and automation space. And then more strategically on the purpose that we truly serve, which is to help customers successfully deploy automation and become more competitive. And really, my general comments on building a winning team, I have kind of three areas that I really kind of focus and believe in. And the first area is, anytime you're building a new team, and you add a new team member, you've essentially created a new team. So it's important to match the culture and the work environment to the desires of the candidate and get a good match there. The second general comment is to establish trust within the team as early as possible. And in order to do this, the leader must demonstrate vulnerability in an open environment that allows them really to remove the fear of conflict. And if you can get these items out on the table quickly and get to consensus faster, you can gain faster accountability and achieve the desired results. So on the surface, it sounds easy, but in practice, very difficult to achieve. And then my third, just general comment on building a winning team that's sustained excellence over time is the ability for the leader to empower the team to act. And what I mean by that is clear communication through all levels of the organization, department, or group, and then transparency of data so that decision-making can make its way all the way down to the front line. And, I look forward to really kind of digging deeper into each of those items, as we get further into the session.
Great. Thanks, Craig, for that insight. Sam, how about you?
Thanks, Tim. Samantha Ziarko, I'm the managing partner of Diag Partners. We are a global recruiting, consulting, and staffing organization. Happy to be here today. Thank you for having me. I think building a winning team can mean something different to everyone. I think there are a lot of terms that are slightly overused, like culture, right? What is culture? And I look forward to diving into that a little bit today. Here at Diag, we're really focused on getting the right people in the right seat. And that can take some trial and error to get to a good place. But we do believe, and I personally believe, in trust and transparency, as both Craig and Rich had mentioned. I think now more than ever, it is important for retention. Allowing your employees to know where you stand as a business and as leaders. And I also believe in not only the employee experience, but the candidate experience. So I look forward to discussing a little bit more about that today.
Great, Sam. Thanks. Before we get started with some questions here, I did want to do a few housekeeping items as well. This live stream is being recorded, so people can come back to it. The PowerPoint presentation that we have, which is very minimal, but has some contact information and things like that, we'll make sure it gets shared with everybody on here. And then there is also a questions segment over here. So if you guys have, as the audience, have any questions, feel free to put some stuff in there and we'll try to answer those. But we have some questions to get started with, and we'll start from there. So Craig, I'm going to start with you first. And you may have covered a little bit of this in kind of your overview, but what are the three specific areas that you look for during the hiring process that spans across both your engineers that you're hiring or your senior professionals to match your culture?
Yeah, thank you, Tim. Yeah, it's a good question. We'll kind of unpack that a little bit. As Samantha mentioned, what is culture and what does that mean? It's something you can feel and really kind of hear and understand when you're in the environment, and you want others to be able to take that away as well. But at AMTR working environment, we're looking for individuals that can operate in an area where there's a lot of new problems to solve, highly customized solutions, and a constant learning model. So we look for kind of three specific things. One is, we call it intellectual curiosity. So we want those engineers, those sales professionals, those next level managers to really kind of want to seek next level education for themselves. They want that hunger. We want, the second piece is we're looking for highly intellectual individuals. In some cases engineers, in some cases trained professionals that are consulting for others, and we want that willingness to self-invest. And when those off hours, that they're continually looking for new ways to achieve the desired result and really kind of investing in themselves. And the third piece, at the end of the day, what we really need is humility in all of our engineers, regardless of the caliber of talent. And we look for humility and that humbleness because of a couple different things as far as building a team, right? You want to point out others' contributions before your own. You want someone who's slow to seek attention for themselves and wants to contribute to the group. And then you want to share that credit because you're defining success, as really a collective effort. And so I think I'll use a Jim Collins reference, but first who, then what, right? I think that's the concept that you ensure you're hiring the right individuals, and then ensuring that they have the right seat on the team. And this is beyond technical competency and technical expertise.
Great, Craig. Rich or Sam, do you have any additional thoughts on that question?
Yeah, I'll say when I think about culture, I think there's kind of two basic diversions in culture, and they all go to how do we select. The first is our culture intentional? You actually define it. Is it? Can you see it, feel it, touch it? Do people understand what your cultural intentions are, or is it the default culture? Who did we hire? What behaviors walked in the door this morning? What attitudes do we tolerate today? And I think what Craig is talking about is setting clear expectations, understanding what you're looking for in team members, and then ultimately it becomes a process of reinforcing those messages along the way, giving feedback when you see behaviors that aren't conforming, teaching actually a culture of feedback that will rely on a culture of trust so people can give honest feedback to each other along the way when they're seeing things that don't match what our cultural intentions are.
To that point on feedback, we're in a little bit different environment these days, right? And so, Sam or anyone else, I mean, when you're seeing that, how feedback was much easier where you could just walk down, the hall when they were sitting there. Now you got to recall them back up or have a video conference. What are you seeing? How are your company handling that situation or other firms that you're working with?
Tim, I agree with you. We are working in a different environment. A lot of companies moving to a remote or hybrid workforce. And, I don't necessarily see it as a negative. I think as leaders, we need to embrace the change. And I think one of the differences versus, having those conversations potentially on the fly, it leads to more intentional discussion, sort of more dedicated one-on-one or team time together. So I think, let's look at the positive that is coming out of this, and embrace that. You might have to be a little more structured with your time management as to when these conversations are happening. It's just more important that they happen. And I think as best as we can in a virtual environment, it's important not to lose your culture and those same key elements that helped you sort of breed, your businesses as they are today. It might look a little different, and you might have to have some creative solutions, but don't do without. Find intentional reasons to come together, whether it be a performance conversation, a check-in conversation, a team building event. There are ways to do it in a virtual environment. So I would just recommend as not only leaders, as organizations, involve your team. Start to partner together as to what solutions for that might look like, because it is different. And some people are still adjusting and might resist for some time to come. So I think we need to embrace the change and start collaborating as to what culture will look like and what communication will look like in a remote workforce. Great.
Hey, Rich, I know you've written a couple books, Joy Inc., with how you wrote your first one, Joy Inc., and this new environment. I mean, do you see differences in how you wrote that? Would you look at how you would talk about to have joy in the workplace now? Can you give a little insight on that?
Tim, I feel like there's a third book coming out soon that'll be Joy Inc. 2, How We Rebuilt a Workplace People Love. This was a dramatic shift for us. You can see over my shoulders this big open room where we've worked for, some form or another in 19 out of our 20 years of history. And of course, March 2020, it was get out of the building. It was like a fire drill. And it was a dramatic shift for a team that valued being in person together for so long. And the team adapted very quickly. One of the unusual elements of Menlo, where our culture meets our practices, is this idea of two people sharing a computer together, working in pairs. So pairs switch every 5 days. So that was our pattern of behavior. Well, how are you going to do this when you're remote, right? There's no one computer to share, and that would be dangerous even if there were. So our team learned to adapt. They do this remote sharing virtually over the course of time. And so all of this became a new way of working. And I will tell you, of all the people who had to adapt to this, I was probably the slowest. Because all I wanted to do was say, guys, it'll only be 8 weeks and then we'll be back to the way it used to be, right? I'm sure every one of us thought it was 8 weeks. I'm not even sure it's going to be 8 weeks from today that we'll have even a chance to be back the way we were. And we changed behaviors. We changed the fundamental way we worked, but we didn't leave our principles behind of teamwork, collaboration, trust, relationships, empathy, human energy, running the experiment, curiosity. All of those things are still in place. They're just done a very different way than they are today.
Thanks, Rich. Any additional thoughts, Craig or Sam?
I think just to add to that is our ability to adapt and change in times of uncertainty. It kind of goes back to the Stockdale paradox, when you have a defined period of time when you know something's going to end, and in this case, there's no definite period. So depending on what tenure you're in and how you operate, we always historically I've always judged work by the number of cars in the parking lot or how long they were here, and I had to change, right? As a leader, I had to change and understand that that productivity was happening outside. It's our ability to adapt, but then at the end of the day, right, as Rich mentioned, those founding principles of the company that sustain most of our organizations over 30 plus years, none of that changes, and you have to keep that at the core. And one of the biggest things that I think that we've done, and I've seen other companies do, is just create a level of transparency deeper in the organization. Even though a department may have sat just across the hall, some of this has led to good change where we're communicating across much larger departments in areas that they might not have got into it in the past. And it really forced you to kind of really adapt and run those experiments and try a couple new things and see what sticks moving forward. So I think at the end of the day, adaptability and our own self-purpose and understanding that maybe the leader has to adapt to new ways of doing business as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I had a conversation earlier today with someone, a person I was doing a call with, and that adaptability is a huge thing. In our business, we have 20 somethings all the way up to 60 somethings, and like you were saying, Craig, I think our 50 and 60 somethings always judge people by the number of how long the car was in the parking lot, right? You're doing your job. But these days, because of technology and different things, you can do your job at any point in time as long as you're getting it done. Why does it have to be in that seat where you could be doing other stuff? I mean, the other day I loved being at home doing work, and in the middle of the day I took my son out wake surfing out on the lake, right? In years past, I've never been able to do that because I'm at the office. I'm at home doing the work, and instead of taking a lunch break, I take a surf break for my son, right? That it was just something that was good for the spirit, in my opinion. Sam, any thoughts?
I agree. I mentioned I'm sorry, Rich had mentioned sort of the no principles left behind. I think this is an opportunity for us to live as businesses and as leaders our core values more authentically. Again, it looks a little different, but you don't have to let go of those principles and those values that make your organizations great. And I do agree, Craig had mentioned it's an opportunity for stronger cross communication. And I will tell you specifically for our team, I think we came out of 2020 a closer organization because having gone remote, you got connected further to those working in remote offices, those working in different departments that you wouldn't necessarily interact with day to day. And, you know, the one other thing I would mention, because I know people are still adjusting and finding ways to keep their employees engaged and to hold on to their culture. I know as leaders, we try to solve all of the world's problems as quick as we can, but take a smaller bite of something. So I think look at the next maybe 90 to 120 days and figure out what the best solution is for your team, for your business. It's changing and changing rapidly. So I think to try to plan for you know, even 12 months out can be somewhat overwhelming with the speed at which things are changing. So take a snapshot of the next 90 to 120 days and start there. And I think it's okay to start smaller.
Great. Hey, Rich, you know, you mentioned a little bit on feedback, you know, so how did team members, new and long-term, you know, find out how they are doing and how to grow? I mean, what is your guys' process?
You know, Tim, we have this very unusual set of HR practices that start from the moment of the first interview, where we bring in people in mass. We used to do it in person. Now we do it in a big Zoom call. We interview 30, 40, 50 people at a time. We pair them during the interview with another candidate because we're simulating our work environment. We work in pairs, so we interview in pairs. Pair one candidate with one another. And then we give them this very intriguing and odd instruction. We tell them, help the person sitting next to you get a second interview, even though they're competing for the same position you are. Help your pair partner succeed. So we're teaching our cultural expectations right from the beginning. We pair them together for 20 minutes for the candidate, then we switch the candidate pairs because that's the way we work. We switch the pairs at least every 5 days here. And so the next 20 minutes, they're paired with somebody else and they're working on something together while a Menlonian's watching. If that works, if they pass that first test of good kindergarten skills, as we like to call it, we invite them in for a paid one-day trial. And they work with us for a day. And in that first day, we're already giving them feedback on how they're doing. We give them feedback at lunchtime. We give them feedback at the end of the day. So right during the interview process, we're already teaching these new candidates, this is a high feedback culture. Now, of course, we're doing this virtually now because we have to be healthy and safe. And then if that works, if that day went well, we invite them in for a 3-week trial. And we've got somebody right now in on a 3-week trial, and we're a very talented individual, technically very capable, but needs to work on some things really hard. We don't need to be a perfect Menlonian in 3 weeks, but we need to see some progress towards a goal. We need to see if there's uptake on the feedback we're giving them. Well, what's happening in this 3-week trial, which is always fun for me to watch, is it's not just that we're teaching the person who's joining how to receive feedback. We're teaching the people who are working with them how to give feedback, how to be explicit but kind, how to be focused but gentle, to get to the goal, because we actually want the candidate to succeed. I mean, it's not this hazing ritual we're trying to put people through that most interview processes often feel like, where it's like, you're just trying to get me to trip up and fail, aren't you? No, we actually want you to succeed. So our feedback is always focused on success criteria. Here's what you need to do. This is what I saw. Here's what we would expect to see differently next time. And ask me any questions you want. And so we start teaching this feedback process during the interview. And I think as I said, the beautiful part of it is it's not just we're teaching the interview candidate, we're giving our team members at the front lines a direct opportunity. So we're not pushing this off to a manager to give feedback. We're not pushing this off to an HR department to give feedback. We are teaching our team members to live in this high feedback culture every single day.
Hey, Sam, a little follow-up on that. I mean, you guys do a lot of, recruiting and staffing for other companies. Are you, the feedback is a great thing, especially in this environment. Are you seeing a lot of candidates really asking at all about, I want to go to a place, that provides that feedback, or is still doing that, where the culture is good? Or is it just, they're trying to find the right, the most money that they can, or different things like that? What are you seeing?
I think it varies from candidate to candidate, but a consistent thread is that communication is key. And I think it starts from, resume submission and an interview. So, Craig, you gave an example earlier about setting the right expectations, right? As somebody interested in the job, they want to know what's expected of them. They want to know what they can expect from the company. So I think the earlier you can set those expectations and then have open dialogue and open communication be a thread throughout their tenure is how you have a successful relationship long term. The way you find a right fit is when it's more than a job, right? You have to match the personality of the candidates with the culture of the organization, and communication is key. So, in 2020, there were a number of people that resigned from work because they found that maybe they wanted to be doing something that was more impactful, or maybe found their calling to something else. So I think having that communication early on and speaking with your employees can help to identify what that is, and if it's offered within your organization, and how you path that forward to an individual. So I appreciate what Rich is saying. I think mentorship is also really key as part of retention. And it sounds like you found a really creative way to make that very inclusive to your staff.
Thanks, Sam. Hey, Craig. So what's unique about AMT, that allows you to keep team members making progress in their career and progressing towards, an investment in the individual?
Yeah, and I'll kind of elaborate just on that in the additional thread that Richard and Samantha just mentioned, which is, early on in that investment period where you're looking and seeking candidates and they're seeking you, is explaining the environment that they're going to be working in. As Rich mentioned, you're getting feedback early on because he's got a high feedback culture, and that's going to be the environment that they're working in. And so whether you do that or the culture is different, being very transparent about that early on, so that way the individual is seeking the right company to explore as well. And I always give the example, not every pilot wants to work at Southwest Airlines. They're jovial, it's a different culture, they're wearing shorts. Most pilots are coming from military Air Force background. And, if that's not who you are as an individual, you don't seek to work for, an airline like that. And for AMT, we try to really explore early on, what motivates the individual, what they do at home, what their hobbies are, how does that really interact with what we're looking for? Because if you don't like change and a new project and a new technical objective, and really kind of not doing the same thing every day, then we may not be the right organization for you. If you enjoy working on the same thing or learning a piece of software and replicating it, there may be other paths for you. And so in order for us to make sure that we're hiring the right cultural fit, we'd like to understand some of those behaviors. We'd like to understand, how they invest their time during off hours and what they're willing to do on their own. We're in an environment where you could be the leader in any subject matter if you choose to invest time in that. And, the entrepreneurial spirit that we have here, if you said, hey, I understand this technology and I learned this new software package and it allows me to add this to a system, you could be the leader of that group in the context of time. So we kind of really explore that. And those individuals who like to do that they thrive in our environment because it provides that complex mix of new things and keeps those curious minds active.
Great, thanks again, Craig, on that. Hey, Sam, thinking about this challenging, talent market today, what are you seeing from the companies that are being most successful in retaining talent? We're talking about building a winning team, but I think as well right now it's almost retaining, the winning team.
Yeah, absolutely. Equally as important. And to piggyback off of some things that Craig was just saying, what we say, in our side of the business is technical experience might help you to land the job, but cultural and core value fit is what gets you to stay. So I'd love to hear that you're expressing some of those interests from the candidate end and sort of the expectations of the organization to make sure that aligns before you even move forward. Because I do think that's when it starts, before someone's hired. So I can really appreciate that. Tim, really good question. And we are seeing, certainly talent is a pain point for a lot of us, but we are seeing some companies that are having a lot of success with retention. So something we mentioned earlier today, we're in a time where it's important to embrace the remote workforce, and there's no one size fits all. So you have to figure out for your organization what that looks like. But not only do I believe you'd have an issue with retention if you mandated something on site or on site full time, it would also be really difficult to compete in the candidate market. The candidate and the talent market without embracing some level of a hybrid schedule. So we're all making that adjustment, but I would encourage people as best as you can embrace the remote workforce. It's here to stay. For how long? I don't have a crystal ball for that, but it is here to stay. So embrace it. It will help you be more successful in retention and competing in the talent market. It was mentioned earlier today, but start measuring your employees' productivity, not hours logged. As we shift to a hybrid schedule or a remote workforce, figure out what KPIs are most important to your team's success and start measuring that. One thing that a lot of successful companies are doing to be proactive is consider potentially a compensation audit. We know that it's very, very competitive in the talent pool right now, and I am absolutely not suggesting you give a 20% increase across your organization. It would be nearly impossible and very, very expensive, but potentially take this opportunity proactively to right size some of your talent or potentially those key members that you quite can't do without. And what I can tell you is it will be far less expensive than trying to compete with a counter offer if and when that gets presented. That would be something I'd recommend just for people to try and get ahead of it. And Craig and Rich both mentioned this, but trust and transparency. People want to believe in their leadership. They want to believe in the company that they're working for. And I think answering some questions proactively about what does the next shutdown look like if and when we're faced with that? How does the organization plan to handle that? And to the level that you're comfortable, what is the financial position of the company? I recognize that some are more comfortable sharing that, and I'm certainly not suggesting you share everything, but to the level that you're comfortable. Again, people want to know. There's certainly some hesitancy in the candidate market to take a new opportunity and also know what the potential future holds for their current organization. So how you're going to handle COVID and a potential shutdown and what the financial position is of the organization. Answering some of those questions proactively can be really impactful. And trust your team. Trust that your team will take that information in stride and appreciate that you're sharing to that level. We mentioned it earlier today, but do your best not to lose your culture. Find intentional ways to come together. That could be a virtual training. And you could also bring people on site and find a way to do that safe and also really make it impactful. But I think it's best that when we do go remote, whether it be entirely or in a hybrid schedule, you don't wipe your hands of everything that made your company special. If anything, it's more important now. Again, to show your core values and to put focus on culture. Candidates want to feel connected. They want to feel engaged. So give them the opportunity to do that. And Craig and Rich, you do really, really a great job at this. But career pathing is really important. Listening to your team and having intentional conversations about what they want to do in an organization and if there's a path to get there. Craig, you mentioned sort of next level education. It doesn't necessarily have to mean a promotion. It could be, what do you want to learn and how can we give you the opportunity to do that? And some companies that are really successful in retaining talent always put a focus on that. And mentorship. Successful mentorship programs, as Richie mentioned, can go a long way. Last, I would say, you don't have to do everything alone. A lot of companies that are highly successful invite the conversation and invite their team members to be a part of the solution. So what I might suggest to companies looking at retention is create a special team and allow them to discuss and problem solve and potentially come away with a solution that they can propose to leadership. Again, I think you do carry a lot of weight, but it's an incredible compliment to tap a couple of people on your team and allow them to be a part of the solution. We are in uncharted water, a lot of us all together. So to open up that dialogue shows that you respect the opinion of others, that you are open to change, and that you want to hear from your teammates. So I would say you don't have to solve everything alone, and embrace the conversation and allow people to assist in creating a solution for your organization.
Sam, that's really good information. I have some thoughts on that, but before I share my thoughts, Rich or Craig, any additional things that you guys, are seeing or doing to, be successful in retaining talent?
Well, as Samantha said, it's a new world right now, and it's one we have to adapt to quickly. There has been a silent revolution that's occurred, and the reason it's silent is because everybody went through it simultaneously. We were all dealing with other bigger issues, whether it was COVID or social justice or politics or all the other things going on in the world. And in the meantime, for the last 520 days or more, however long it's been for all of us, we have adjusted all of our work behaviors, every single one of us. We've learned a new way to work. We've learned a new way to communicate. We've learned a new way to adapt to a completely different kind of work environment than any of us were expecting. And it happened in an instant. It was like a fire drill. And boom, we were all in it together. In those 500 plus days we've been in, we have to all, particularly as top leaders, recognize that this revolution occurred, and we can either fight it or we can embrace it. And what I'm seeing, and Samantha, I'd be curious if you're seeing the same thing from your perspective. The companies that are losing right now are saying we are either going to be X or we are going to be Y. And the X people are saying we're going to be 100% remote. We're declaring, and everybody's going to be remote. And the Y people are saying we're going to all come back by, a few weeks ago it was September 1st, and now it's October 1st, and then it's January 1st. But they're all saying by some point we're going to be back. And those organizations I see are losing right now. The ones that are making these declarative top-down statements like we're either going to be X or we're going to be Y. We took a different approach, and I think it's working. We'll see. Check back with me in 6 months. Where I went to the team just last Thursday, and I said, guys, this is your company. Help us define, as Samantha was saying, how do you want to work going forward? How do you want this company to be? Now, whatever we sign up for, there's going to be extra work. We have to figure out new systems of communication, new systems of feedback, new submission systems of promotion and evaluation and all that kind of stuff. But we're going to do it together. We're going to do it as a team. I trust you. We're going to figure it out together. And I'm getting feedback from the team that they really appreciated the vulnerability, the openness, the authenticity around this, that we can say, look, we don't know what the answer is. I want you guys to participate with us in this. We're not declaring X, we're not declaring Y. We're saying, what do you want this to be as a company going forward? And there's opportunities no matter what we choose.
Which, to your point, we found that the most successful companies with retention are having more of a dynamic policy. So I mentioned, maybe don't try to solve for the next 2 years and pick an arbitrary date in 2020 for return to work. Maybe look at the next 90 to 120 days. But also offering a space for people to come that they are deciding sort of the when is going well. far better than I think mandating people come on site. So a lot of organizations are saying the space is here and it's available, and these are the ways that we're going to do it safely, but should you choose to come in, that is available to you. And I think you'll find that some people really want to take advantage of that. Of course, there's always going to be people that prefer to work remotely, whether or not there's a space to come to. But offering it as an option, I think you'd be surprised how many people will take advantage of that when it's not necessarily mandatory. People enjoy being together. They appreciate the collaboration. There's certainly an energy that comes with being with your peers and problem solving or getting creative and innovative. You cannot replace that virtually, in my opinion. So I think if you offer the space and leave it open to your staff, you'll be surprised how many people choose to take advantage of that without it being mandated. So
this summer, I'll simply say there's an additional benefit to having the option. The gentleman sitting right behind me here, Joe, his power went out. I bet a lot of people are experiencing that. He was planning on working at home today, and then he says he called in this morning and he said, "Hey, I'm coming into the office." What a great opportunity, right? He didn't lose a day of work. He came into work. He would have preferred to be home, but he's here now.
Yeah, Rich, we had that, I think a couple of weeks ago. I had lost my power as well, but I had come into the office for something else, and I was like, why so many people here? Like, oh yeah, we all lost our power. So, that was, there definitely was that. Craig, from your standpoint, I mean, from AMT, how are you guys? Are you doing anything special in retaining talent?
Yeah, I think, touch on a couple of points as Samantha mentioned, being flexible, right? Giving people the option to either come to an office space or come collaborate with the team. And know that they're also safe if they're to stay at home and work, is creating that safe environment, right? Everybody's got a hierarchy of needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and understanding what those are. So, as that really pertains to retention, right? So there's the job market's active right now. There's new opportunities. People are offering more flexibility. How do you compete with that? And not just on compensation alone. You have to have peers at work that you have relationships with. You have to respect your team members, and you have to feel like you're a part of something special. And I think Rich, you nailed it right there as far as allowing the team to decide how they want the operations and the company to function moving forward, and then providing some context and some guidelines around that. Now you have team members that are bought into the company because they were involved in the decision-making process. They feel like they're part of something that's unique and different. And so I think those are two great points. And, we're trying to be a little bit flexible ourselves right now. A little bit of, specific to us is we are creating a hybrid opportunity for those relationships, but also opening things back up so that they can be a part of active team member discussions. And then just, that, the relationship with their direct supervisors is a big opportunity as well, because those direct relationships and the team members around them are what's going to make a difference when that other new opportunity shows up that offers maybe more flexibility, or depending on what their needs are. Because what we're all facing right now is a new landscape of competition. What typically was our competition prior was a geographic region, was a specific industry, was a specific company that you sought to seek after, and now all those things are kind of off the table, right? Time zones matter less, geographic location matters less, especially I think Rich, you mentioned it, companies offering remote first and then who can really play a different really, and then you just have geographic location as it relates to cost of living too. There's other aspects of that, and individuals are making decisions based on that. So you got to try to match that with what you're doing. But then as an organization, something we're doing is our leadership team is trying to get to know everybody on a new level, maybe that we haven't known people before, and really trying to understand at an individual level, really, why they're here at our organization, and why we are something special, and how they can contribute to the future of the company. So.
And Tim, one more thing I wanted to mention, and Craig, you alluded to this just now. We're all dealing with a supply shortage in the talent space, right? So recognizing that your team is everyone is doing more with less. So, consider that your team, and acknowledge that with your team would also be something that, that I recommend, which will assist in retention. People want to be recognized for their work, especially when they're doing more of it right now. And let's continue to acknowledge that 1 in 4 women have left the workforce in the last 18 months to either care for a young child or care for a loved one. So we don't get that part of the workforce back without some flexibility and without being dynamic as employers. So something to consider as you are looking at retention of your workforce, but also potentially opening up an additional pool of candidates to consider.
Yeah, that's Sam. That's a great point. I can't remember who said it. I think it was you as well. I think one of the big things that I take out of this, as I'm looking at it, well, there's a lot, but productivity, not hours logged, right? And I think that one right there could be a key to bringing back some of those women that have left the workforce, right? Because if it's all focused more on what you're getting done rather than how many hours you have to work, right? It hopefully opens up that ability to be more flexible at the timing of when they do it and what it is specifically that they're doing. The other point that I think is great for some of the people in the audience as well, we're a smaller company. I mean, we're 70 people, but not a GM, not a Google, not, Amazon or anything like that, right? And that financial impact of the company, right? When you're thinking about a smaller company, is this going to cause more financial impact? And in reality, a lot of the small businesses are doing very well, right? And therefore still can be very good employers and not have to worry about, if they're going to be able to make payroll or if they're going to be able to do X or Y, right? And really, I guess, driving that opportunity or opening up that financial information a little bit more as an interviewee is coming in, or a person that's younger that might be saying, oh, I'm not sure that they're going to be around. How am I going to maintain this? And therefore them knowing that there's strength there and not a weakness.
Yeah, I have a general managerial edict, Tim, and that is if you don't share information, people make it up in its absence, and they never make up a better story than the truth. They always make up a worse story.
Yeah. All right. Still looking for some questions from the audience, but if we don't have any, we'll continue to run through a few other ones. So I'll start this one, Craig, with you. And I think we probably talked a little bit about this, but from your viewpoint, what are the key ingredients that comprise the DNA of a winning team, regardless if you are, in sales or middle management, engineering, technical, or just starting your career?
Yeah, I think, when you look at, talent, when you continually top grade the team and really kind of look at high performing teams, when you add higher performance talent to the team, the team typically gets better. Everybody's performing at that next level. Until you've kind of lived it, really seen it, it's tough to kind of see that. But, you want to constantly be, challenging the team to get to the next level and really kind of breed, performance so that everybody's holding each other accountable. And that just kind of that ingredient of, it wasn't good enough. Let's get to the next level. Next time, how can we do better? Lessons learned. Those kind of things, I think, help in with respect to that. So,
Any thoughts, Rich or Sam?
We love a lot of books by Patrick Lencioni, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, Death by Meeting, all those kind of things. One of his great books is called The Ideal Team Player. And it talks about the 3 key qualities of what makes a great team player. And let's face it, there are very few organizations anymore where individual heroes can make big goal accomplishments for an organization. We have to have people working together. And this is very similar to what Craig talked about earlier, this idea of hungry, humble, and smart. And the smart part isn't about IQ smart. It's more about EQ smart. Do you know people? Do you know how people get along with one another? Can you sense in a conversation? Can you use empathy, compassion for your fellow person? Are you hungry? Are you willing to go that little bit of an extra step, extra mile? Are you looking out for the bigger picture, not just your individual role? Those sort of things. Those are the things that we look for here. And then there's a great book that's just about to be released from my friend John Bacon here in Ann Arbor. It's called Let Them Lead. And it's about a story of a Huron hockey team that went from worst in the nation to almost winning the state championship just 4 years later. And he has this great system that I just love, where he talks about, so many of us as leaders talk about lead by example, right? And his statement was on the hockey team, he says, lead by example. He says, we got a name for people who lead by example. We call them sophomores. So the idea is, freshmen, you're here to learn your job. Sophomores, you're here to do your job. Juniors, you're here to do your job and know everyone else's job. And seniors, you're here to do your job, know everybody else's job, and make sure everybody else is doing their job. And I think as you move up the ranks, I think this expansive idea of what is your role here beyond just your individual contribution, whatever your degree is, your skill set, your title inside the organization, how much are you looking outside your role to make sure that the entire system is working? And when you see something wrong, you say something, you step in, you help out, you say, I can help with that. Those are the kind of things that I think really build a winning team, especially in this crazy changing environment that we're in right now.
Yeah, no, I like that that last analogy. The lead by example. That's what we call sophomores. That's pretty good. And then as you kind of be a true leader, you're doing more than just leading by example, right? So, Sam, any additional thoughts there? We do have one question from the audience, and of course, I knew who it would be.
I don't have any additional thoughts on that, but I would endorse what Rich mentioned about Lencioni, really anything by Lencioni, but the ideal team player. We actually assigned the reading during the height of the pandemic and shutdown. We assigned it to our entire team and actually did some work around that book. So I would endorse that absolutely if you're looking for a read for your team. Yeah,
and I know I think last time and the last roundtable that we had, Titus Crab has a question here. But before that, we talked a little bit about feedback, and he talked about a book called Radical Candor, and that book I think is pretty good as well. I just got done listening to that and thought there was a lot of good stuff out of there. But Titus's question is, from the three of you guys, what technology solutions have you seen that successfully help tie a hybrid remote workforce together? And he's saying, could it be Teams, Facebook? But which ones have you seen technology-wise work the best?
Yeah, I will say one of the things we did early on in the pandemic, which was both a cost-saving measure and enhance the team's benefits measure, was we jettisoned our traditional phone system because, of course, what do you need a phone system for when you're not in the office? We transitioned our main switchboard number over to Zoom, and we gave everybody on the team personal private Zoom accounts. So now that becomes a benefit for a team member because you can use them not only during your workday, but any other time when you want to get together with friends and family and have chats and that sort of thing. So Zoom's become a big platform for us. We're not exclusively Zoom. I think in the spirit of other conversations we've had today, what I would say to Titus is be careful standardizing on something, because you may find that in certain situations your team your teamwork is enhanced by a different technology. So we literally let our team members choose which one works best for them. So we have used a number of different platforms. I know when they're working in their pairs, they typically prefer the Google platform and the Google tools. At least our software developers do. And so we just let them choose that, because I think, and this even goes back to like Gallup survey stuff about employee satisfaction at work. Do you have the tools you need to do your job? And I think I will simply extend that and say, and do you like the tools that you need to do your job? Because if you don't, you should give your team the option to figure out where it is, rather than, again, this top-down hierarchical view of, we know what's best for you, here it is, use this for everything.
So before I let the other two, we do have one other question that I'd like Sam to just answer fairly quickly, and then I'd like to give you guys a couple seconds here to kind of give you last thoughts. We had one other question because we're coming up on the hour. The question is, do you have any tips to increase the applicant pool or preferences for job posting platforms that may be better than others?
Okay, so what I would say, I would have some questions as to where the posts are, what channels you're using to post. What I would say is I'm not surprised that you're seeing a lower flow of traffic. My advice would be, if you have the capacity to start to do some outreach, there's the market is very, very passive, right? So anyone that you might be wanting to hire more than likely is engaged or already has a position. So it's less likely that they might go out and seek something new today. I'm not saying that very well may not change. So if there's any way to do some outreach, I would suggest that you do that. The only other, the recommendation that I might have to is to start talking, start having conversations with candidates that you very well may even have a reservation about on paper. Some of the things that we hear from managers, people in hiring positions are, oh, they didn't have enough years of experience, so I didn't want to make the call. I didn't like their last job title. I saw a gap in their resume. What I would say is there's a lot unknown about a candidate until you actually have the conversation. So I would encourage everyone to start talking. A resume only tells part of a candidate's story. You'll be surprised how much talent you can find when you just start having conversations with your applicants. If they're not a fit for that position, they could be a fit for something else. They could be a fit in 3 months. And then you can start building a pipeline of candidates, which admittedly, we're all probably very bad at. So don't feel bad if you don't have that ironed down just yet, but pipelining talent can make a considerable difference. Here at Diag, we've created an application and invested in a team to manage this effort. And, I'm not suggesting you go out and invest in an expensive CRM or anything. It can be done in a folder. It can be done in an Excel spreadsheet. But I would say start having conversations, even if the pool of candidates that you're getting to your your postings are small. Make the calls. You might be surprised what you find. And again, a resume only tells part of the story. And I know we're coming up on the end here, Tim. So I would say anyone that has additional questions about that, I'm happy to be available to discuss some things that have worked successfully either within our business or with some of our client partners.
Great. Thanks, Sam.
Can I throw one more thing out that used to be a black mark against everybody and it cannot be anymore? If they have a gap in their employment record, if they've been unemployed for the last year, acknowledge the fact that they may be somebody that had to exit out because of some personal issues that they were dealing with. And if you give them enough flexibility, they might be willing to enter back into the workforce. So stop having in your head that, oh, if they don't have a job, they must not be worthy of our conversation with them. Yeah,
great, Rich. Craig, any last thoughts as well? And before you get there, as Sam mentioned, the PowerPoint will have the contact information for everybody out here if you want to reach out to anyone.
Yeah, kind of last thoughts. I'll just go back to Titus's question. Is there's a lot of good tools out there. I think multiple tools is the way to go, allowing teams to kind of flex. SharePoint's got a lot of good tools in behind there. As far as being able to share documents, it forced us to redesign our network structure and revisit just how we share documents. And you'd be surprised the cleanliness of having transient communication versus email traffic. If you kind of network diagram that, you'd see all the inefficiencies versus a transient style communication. So just one tidbit for Titus. Kind of key takeaways. Final comments for me really is create a safe environment where people are comfortable bringing up ideas throughout their leadership. As leaders, we need to listen to our team members and our entire organizations before we dictate and mandate direction in areas. And then, as Samantha alluded to, remove the anxiety of the business. Be transparent about where things are at, so people aren't making up their own assumptions about where things are. And then my final personal comments as leaders, as individuals in the industry, being well read there's something to be said for that. There was lots of, references to Collins and Pat Lencioni and others. And my executive team has even read Rich's book, Joy Inc., and learned some things from that. So being well read is a key contributor and a key element to success.
Rich, any final thoughts?
Well, I'm with Craig. Leaders are readers and readers are leaders. They can be your teachers these days. There's a lot of great books out there. They can teach us how to be better leaders. This is a very dynamic time we're in right now. Probably the most dynamic time I've ever seen in my history. And boy, this is a time for great adaptation. We all have to be curious learners again.
Great. And Sam?
A final thought for me, and my advice to everyone in a hiring position would be, please don't lose sight that the candidate experience matters. You are, again, I think Craig mentioned it, you're not necessarily competing against other Metro Detroit businesses. You're competing against businesses on a global scale. So the candidate experience and candidate engagement matters. Get comfortable without compromising your process. Get comfortable making faster decisions because you are competing against companies that are. And even if you don't hire a candidate, you do not want them to have a negative experience of your organization or your interview and hiring process, because that leads to hesitation of their application in the future. Right.
And they might talk to one another.
And, absolutely. So the candidate experience matters. And I would say get back to your candidates. Some of the biggest pain points we hear in the market is, I applied, never heard back. I interviewed twice, I never heard back. I would encourage you to make the uncomfortable call or send the email because it does matter for the brand of your business and the candidate experience and how they feel about you going forward. So that would be part of my counsel.
Great. I appreciate the time. I enjoyed the conversation. One last, I guess, final thought from myself. What I took a little bit. I like the new level of knowing people, because I think then you kind of really get to understand what do they want to do, both personally and professionally. But then it helps you get back to the biggest thing, right? Getting the right people in the right seats. And that really helps building that winning team. So thanks again. Really appreciate it. We do have just one final thought. We do have our final industrial automation roundtable, the third on talent. That will be Wednesday, October 27th, 12 p.m. again on retain, engage, and reward. So we look forward to seeing you guys there. And thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Bye-bye.